Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of the Snowies Camping Show. You are here as usual with Ben and Lauren, and we have an extra special guest today. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube as well, and jump onto our Facebook group, the Snowies Camping Show, so you can give us your feedback or ask us questions or get into any other conversations that are happening there today. So, or not today, but just generally, whenever. So we have previously talked about hiking food before. Yep. Episode 33, I think, was called Food for Hiking. That's rather creative, isn't it? And that sort of loosely covered, you know, your generic general food options for hiking and packaged foods and all sorts of that sort of stuff. But in this particular episode, what we want to do is essentially flesh out more about how to actually plan your food for multi-day trips, and also cover some DIY dehydrating. Yeah. And to do that, we've got in a extra special guest, Kate Grarock. How are you, Kate?
Hey, Kate.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Sorry, I should have said Dr. Kate Grarock actually.
Lauren's so excited to have you here. She's probably a bit nervous.
I'm not nervous. No, but I think there might be a few of you out there who know who Kate is. But for those of you who don't, who are you, Kate?
Oh, big question. I guess an ecologist who makes hiking videos. Yeah, I think that's a small summary. I could go on forever, but, you know, that's the gist of it.
So you have a website and a YouTube channel. What are they called? Where can people find you?
I have one, like a website called AustralianHiking.com, and then my YouTube and all my, you know, Instagrammies and stuff are just at Kate Grarock, so Grarock.
Awesome, cool.
It's a cool channel. I'll admit I hadn't watched it beforehand, but Lauren got me onto it because she's been a fan for a while. Yeah. And I did get hooked. Sitting at work, I started watching it, and I don't know, it was at least an hour went past, and I realised I'm hooked watching you on this journey through. I can't remember where it was, but it went from scenery to using gear to setting up tents and all sorts of stuff. And I pulled myself.
I'm going to ask: was it more the hiking gear that you're into, or more the actual adventures?
Well, it went from one to the other. I think I was interested in your adventure, and then I thought that's a cool tent, and then you did a review on that tent, so then I watched that video, and then there was something about Big Rock, Little Rock, and I watched that video too. And at some point I messaged Lauren and said, "You've got me hooked now."
Yeah, for sure. Well, I like your hiking videos because they're sort of a bit like slow TV for me, and it's like I actually put your recent Butterwangs one on the on my TV. I like Chromecast it while I was doing some knitting one night, and I loved it. It was so good. Anyway,
so the ads come on and blare in your face and you're like,
if you love hiking and you love adventures and the environment, get onto YouTube and check out Kate's content because it's awesome.
It's cool.
So one of the main reasons why I reached out to you and asked if you want to come on here is because one of your videos that you have done is talking about, well, you've done a couple, one about dehydrating food and one about the food that you pack with you usually. So when you do have a multi-day trip coming up, what do you how do you go about starting to prepare or plan food to your trip? Like, what's the first things you consider?
Yeah, well, the big thing, I guess, is the style of trip. So I do a lot of solo stuff, and sometimes when I'm doing solo, I just go. And on those flat-out trips, meals sort of take a bit of a back seat. Whereas, you know, when I hike with my partner, Elsie, there's a bit more wine and cheese involved. So I think that's the main one is working out what style of hike I'm doing, so to match the food to that.
So I'm assuming if you're going solo, you'll have more snacky type food, whereas if you're going with other people, more meal-based stuff.
I tend not to eat lunch when I'm going flat out. I'd prefer to have, scrog and those sorts of things just to snack on throughout the day.
Okay, cool. And how do you work out how much food to take? Like, I mean, obviously you know yourself, but if you getting into it, what are things you need to recommend?
That's really hard. And like, honestly, when I first started hiking, I'd take, this and that and a pizza, and I'd be like, oh, that'll be really nice, and just way too much stuff. And so I just recommend people, try not to pack too much stuff, but at the end of each hike, have a look at what you're bringing home and be like, oh, actually, I didn't need those 5 packets of soup and X, Y, Z. And I think that's how I slowly honed it in. And, I at times when I do the really long trails, I have got into like, okay, this is my weight, this is my height, this is my distance, and looking at calories and counting every sort of calorie to make sure I was hitting those things. But that's not that much fun for the general hiker. So most people don't need to get that crazy.
Do you reckon that, have you had much success in counting calories? Because I know from my experience, I've done that on, probably the first big hike I ever did it on. My wife and I went, and I was just on the edge. I was just scraping through, and a few days in, my wife said, oh, I'm eating so well. I've had so much food. And I said, seriously? Can I have some of yours? Because I'm scraping by here. I'm barely getting through, and I don't have much extra to sort of burn off.
Not much to give.
So have you had much success in sort of counting calories?
For me, I did, I guess. Maybe I was more like your wife. And I guess it gave me the confidence, because when you look at the food, especially some of that dehydrated stuff, or you're like, that's not enough food for 14 days. But, if I know I can't remember what I beefed it up to, but, like not my normal calorie intakes. I did beef it up quite high, but yeah, it worked really well for me. I did that on the Larapinta and a couple of other longer distance hikes, and it seemed to work.
Okay. Because it's about calorie dense food. Like I remember it was a Larapinta that I did it too. So peanut butter and all these things that you just have a little bit. I used to have peanut butter on like small choc chip cookies for lunch, just so it's easy to eat on the way. You just get this massive energy hit just to get you through the day, and then a decent meal. So
I think Sam was talking about, she uses that non-refrigeratable spreadable cheese, like the snacks and stuff, but takes heaps of that anyway.
Yeah.
Well, this lovely guy from Tassie sent me freeze-dried cheese. Have you guys tried that?
Wow.
No, I'm literally writing it down right now. Freeze-dried cheese. It's from those
people that make those freeze-dried like forager like fruits. I'm not hugely into those, but I put the first cheese one in my mouth and I was like, ugh. But then after 5-6 seconds, once it dissolves, you're like, this is delicious. And you're just like pounding the cheese.
Right.
And there's so many calories in it. It's just magic.
Did you say that was the same people who do forager, the fruits?
I think so, yeah. Okay. They do the fruit.
All right. Is it just like crunchy cheese?
Dried the texture's not that nice, kind of like the fruit. But yeah, after a while, I guess the oiliness, it's beautiful.
It's like freeze-dried ice cream, right? It tastes like ice cream, but you're eating.
Yeah, it's just like little pebbles. I'll get one out.
I wonder what happens if you
doesn't look that appetizing. Yeah, and it's sort of like flaky, and I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my gosh, that actually looks.
So they do this freeze-dried ice cream, right? So, and it's just like eating foam, but if you eat it dry, it's just like crunchy ice cream. If you reconstitute it, it's just slop in a bowl.
Yeah.
Wonder what happens if you do that with the cheese. Have you tried?
I'd say slop.
I
haven't, no.
So it's like a crouton, basically.
Yeah, but it's like it has the full flavour. It's so impressive.
Awesome.
Freeze dry is pretty cool. I don't know if you looked into the science behind it all, but the way something's freeze dried versus dehydrated is very different. Freeze dried
quite a different thing.
Sucks the moisture out and it maintains the shape and everything. That's why you get whole freeze dried strawberries instead of those crunchy, leathery or flat leathery looking things.
Yeah, so, we'll talk about dehydrating in a bit. But
jumping ahead.
You are. Foods. So in terms of how do you store your food or pack your food when you're going?
Well, I guess I'd like to break it into days or good question. Once again, it depends how long I'm going, but basically I'll sort of lay it all out on the table and like this is, lunch 1, lunch 2, dinner, make sure I've got everything covered.
Yeah.
Then I tend to, for the day, I guess, because I pack my food down quite deep because it's pretty heavy, just have the stuff that I'll need that day sort of up higher, I guess, in my pack.
Yeah.
And then, my snacks, so I don't have to dig around too much, just, I guess, generally. But, just Ziplocs are huge for me. And doing any prep you can do at home in your own kitchen where you've got, cleaning surfaces and stuff like that, I find really, really helpful. And then I just, heaps of Ziplocs. I do wash them and reuse them. So, yeah.
Do you have a weight that you try to stick to for each day for food?
I do sometimes, but I think I can. I can't quite remember what it was. I think it was like 700 grams per day.
All right. Okay. I've done it before, but I can't remember what I came to.
Yeah.
When you think about it, that adds up quickly, doesn't it? If you go for 14 days, that's a lot of weight. If you went for 14 days, would you carry all the food from the start or do you organise food drops?
I love a good food drop, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Clean undies, fresh socks,
just food.
Oh, sorry.
Got a dirty look
Wear
then.
2 pairs of undies for 7 days. I meant 14 days.
You wash, but that's a different topic.
It is.
Yeah.
Right, Ben, the next question Ben wants to ask you, he's been waiting for so long.
Is this the beer one?
Yeah.
You've always got beers in your video. I like a good beer. So I guess I was just, is that a necessity? Because that adds like 400 odd grams at least to your pack per beer, and assuming you have one a day.
Yeah. Look, I think that's originally why I got into ultralight hiking, because I'm just like, wow, this is just too heavy, all this beer. So yeah, like I pay $800 for this crazy tent from the US, and then I carry 4 beers in my backpack. I tend to I don't know, I get like these meal kits for like cooking, and I like at home, not camping, and they have like these sort of insulated plastic wrap with them, so I whack the beers in there, and I always love it if you've got a nice a cold stream to put them in, but mostly they're warm, but I just sort of get used to that one.
That was going to be my next question. How do you get them cold? But no, that's okay, because I actually, before the show, I was watching a video and I saw you pull 4 beers out of a river, so I reckon that's how you keep them cold. But you can actually get like powdered beer. I've seen. I think I've actually tried it in the past, and it's not. Don't go there. But someone somewhere at some stage, I think we wrote about it on our blog at somewhere, that there's like a powdered beer you can get. But I think you'd only be drinking that for the sake of saying you're having a beer, not because you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like you could go with a powdered wine, because I feel like a reconstituted powdered wine wouldn't taste that different from how it tastes to begin with.
I think you're scraping the bottom of the barrel there.
Okay. Anyway. So just to sort of round off this generic sort of section, what is your favourite things to take? So you're planning to go hiking and you're like 100% must have, apart from the beer, every time.
Yeah. I do love a beef jerky, so I make my own beef jerky. What else do I love? Mee goreng. That's terrible, but I love like that soupy for breakfast. That's pretty much my go-to breakfast. I'm not really a porridge eater.
Is that the one that you made extra watery so you could drink when you forgot your spoon?
Yeah. Probably. Oh no, I think that was a dal or something like that, or spaghetti bolognese, which was like slop.
Okay. So
but yeah, I think that's the main ones.
Yeah. Is coffee always going?
Oh, yeah, coffee. Yeah. I'm getting into those, those cool little drip filters that you hang over your cup and pour it in.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
I used to do the old school cowboy coffee where you just throw the coffee grounds in and give it a spin. And
I like the way you've tried to sell that a bit. You do get a few little greasy bits in the bottom.
Just like black shit.
Coffee grinds in your teeth.
Black stuff all through my teeth.
So that's really why you solo hike, isn't it?
Yeah. That, the snoring and,
all the other bits. So you just mentioned dehydrating beef jerky. And so I reckon your dehydrating food video was the first one of yours that I actually came across. So what do you think the pros and cons of dehydrating your own food are generally?
Yeah, well, I originally got into it because some of the commercially available ones, they just, I feel like they weren't nourishing me. There was something in them, I don't know, the preservative just doesn't really agree with me, and I just feel a bit weird after eating them. And so I was like, oh, well, you can't take a big slab of mince with you. It won't last for several days. I think Larapinta sort of kicked me into trying to look further into this. And so, good old YouTube, a few Googlings, and I just sort of started tinkering with it. At first I was like kind of scared to eat your own product and not give yourself food poisoning. So I think I had enough time in prep for the Larapinta that I made it, and I just stored it at home and then ate it at home in case I got, food poisoning, wasn't out on the trail. Just sort of started to get more and more creative with it. So whatever you can imagine.
Did you have a dehydrator to start with? Do you think you need one?
You don't need one. I did try doing it with my oven. It gets a little bit fussy. Maybe some people can have some luck with it. I think you just shove a wooden spoon in the oven door to try and let some of the moisture out.
Yeah.
I think I did that in the early days, but then I just went on Gumtree and bought one for, $40 secondhand, one of those circle ones. And then once I got a bit more pro with my dehydrating, I went and got one of those hectic ones that are square. It just is easier to put the goods down, and it's a lot quicker.
Yeah, for sure. And so just because, I guess, now this sort of question might sound weird, but just because you can dehydrate something doesn't mean you should, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you maybe share some dehydrating fails with us?
Fails.
Something that just turned into a big slab of leathery.
Or just, I mean, like in your experience, what foods work really well and what don't?
Yeah, so there's definitely some tricks to the trade. So early on I did some mince, and we ended up calling it, like, what is it, meat pebbles, I think, because one of the tricks that I've learned is you put a bit of crushed up breadcrumbs in the mince when you're making it, when it's still wet, and then dehydrate it. It kind of gives it like pores so that it can rehydrate. But I didn't used to do that, and so originally I'd get to camp and you throw your mince in the in your pot to rehydrate, and then you leave it there for an hour, heat it up, and it'd still be like really like hard. It'd be basically jerky still because it's so impenetrable.
Right. That's a good tip.
So there's been some very crunchy meals had in the butter wings, but they've slowly gotten better and better.
That's awesome. So someone who I know, like Sam, who works here, we talk about Sam a lot on this podcast because she's
ultra lightweight hiker.
She's ultra lightweight hiking girl, but she doesn't
love Sam.
She doesn't want to be on the podcast. And we love Sam too. And that's totally fine. I think I've said that so many times. I'm not bitter about it. But I was talking to her about dehydrating meals once, and she doesn't do it. And one of the reasons why she said she didn't was because a friend of hers finds that if she wants to reconstitute the food, usually when she stops for lunch, that's when she has to start her reconstitution process so that it's ready later on. It takes a couple of hours. Has that been your experience?
Yes and no. So in the early stages, yes. I guess as I got better at it, and there's sort of different methods. So one thing I do is like I make a dal, like sort of lentils, and I'll once it's dry, I'll whack it in a blender and just make it like dust or powder, and so then it just straight away rehydrates. Whereas if you leave it in the lentil form, it can need a soaking. So I guess there's tricks, but then you're losing that beautiful like nutty dal sort of texture, and you're just eating slop.
Well,
depends how you
curry
feel.
Lentil soup, maybe you could call it something gourmet. Yeah, for sure.
It always tastes better in the outdoors anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that tip you were saying about with the breadcrumbs, putting it into the mince. Did you come across that yourself, or did you pick that up somewhere online?
I think there's a Facebook forum called like Dehydrating Divas and Dudes or something like that. I think it's an American one, but I think a lot of them are preppers, like not ultra like hikers, but
cool.
They've got some really good info.
I was going to ask if you got info from anywhere in particular, or if it was just, it seems like it's a combination of, this Facebook group is great and just trial and error.
Yeah.
Just make some meals and dehydrate them.
Bit of trial and error. And like even sometimes I'll have a leftover meal from something I've cooked and I'll try dehydrating that, and then you're like, okay, the meat chunks need to be much smaller. Some meals just don't work.
Okay.
I guess that's the key. It would be consistency with the shape or the size of everything, I suppose, wouldn't it? So it all dehydrates at the same rate.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask when you are, because I know you do spag bowl and things like that and actual meals, do you find it better to dehydrate the components and assemble it when you're on the trail, or do you sort of actually make a meal and just dehydrate that meal?
Yeah, I pretty much make a meal. Like I cut up all the veggies for the spaghetti bolognese, and I whack heaps of veggies in it because I feel like, on the trail you want, all the nutrients and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'd make the whole part like sauce, but then I'd take the pasta, or I usually use Deb mashed potato because it's so instant. You just tip hot water on it and boom.
Yeah.
So I'd have like the made sauce, like the mince, the carrots, and then I'd reconstitute both of them separately.
Do you use, I think it's, I should have looked this up beforehand, but TVP, I think it's called.
Have you
ever tried that? I had a mate make something for me once out of that, and it was all right, but I think it was only right because it was really well disguised with all the pesto and other stuff. We were on a canoe trip, so the weight didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I've heard of other people using that for dehydrated food, but I've always used...
Jake has used it before. He's vegetarian, someone who works on our web team. And I watched that film, I don't know, some vegan documentary on Netflix, and attempted veganism for a very short time before I decided it was not for me in this lifetime. And part of that was buying TVP, and I reconstituted it, and the smell, I was like,
something vegetable protein. I decided
it's textured vegetable protein, and I decided not to continue with that. But the chickens really loved it. But apparently, Jake said that he's used it before in meals like hamburger patties and mince and stuff. And if you get lots of flavour into it, it's not too bad.
What about like couscous or pasta? Like pasta uses a lot more water. Do you consider much about how much water you're using? Larry Pinter Trail is a classic example where water's, you've got to,
absolutely. And also time, because gas and cooking. So I tend not to take pasta because it's just like boily. It takes forever. But couscous is a good one. And Deb mashed potatoes, my go-to. It's basically my base for every single dinner I make.
Yeah, you can mix all sorts in there. And gravy powder with your Deb.
Yeah. What I want to know about is when I was reading more about dehydrating food recently, someone was saying they dehydrate their pasta. So they actually cook their pasta.
Wow.
And then they dehydrate it.
That
and I was like,
an inefficient
I
use
don't
of
understand the purpose of that. Like if you cook your pasta and then you dehydrate it, aren't you literally just taking it back to what it was before you cooked it?
Reverse engineering your pasta. Yeah.
I don't know.
There must be some sensible.
Yeah, can you try that?
And I'll tell us what I haven't gone down that path.
So my other question about dehydrating your own food is flavour. Is it affected too much?
If anything, it's like an extra boost, like it's a smack in the face of flavour. I do these things, I call them tomato wagon wheels, and you just slice a tomato, like you slice it sort of like pretty thick, and then they've turned into these tomato chips, and like the tomato flavour in them is just bonkers. It's so powerful.
Really intense. And if you're doing meals where you're reconstituting the food, is the flavour just as good, or is something lost in reconstitution?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Possibly, maybe a little bit.
Nothing obvious then.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but maybe. Maybe because I'm eating it on Deb instead of fancy pasta, it doesn't quite have the same.
And maybe because you're just eating it after you've spent all day walking and you just don't care.
Yeah, just need food.
You just need food.
How long does it take to dehydrate tomato that's that thick or meals? Like, you'd have to prep a few weeks in advance if you've got something coming up, a trip coming up, I would think.
Yeah. So I normally like you said, in terms of like I put it on overnight would probably be enough for that, I'd say. Okay. But I like to, if I've got a big trip, like I'm a huge planner, so I'll be like looking 6 months out, I'll be like, making stuff and, working out where I'm going to camp and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, nice.
I've been a bit lazy lately. I've sort of just gotten to a brand of dehydrated food, so I'm just like slush eat.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah. If are you talking about Radix?
Yes.
Yeah, Radix is so good. We love Radix.
So I didn't know if I should name drop.
No, you can name drop. It's fine.
So impressed. Yeah. Like there's one flavour I think I didn't like, but the rest are amazing.
Yeah, I think when we first, do you remember when we first tried that together?
Yeah. We were doing some trial thing.
We were doing some funny
long
thing.
story, yeah. But we tried it, and it was the texture's really good, right?
Yeah.
And it tastes. It
feels like
really
you're sort
good.
of actually eating something you could have potentially cooked.
Yes. And there's one that's got like avocado in it. I'm like, that can't be good. Like,
I haven't had that one yet.
It's lovely.
Oh, but you had it. It was good. All right, I'm going to put that on my list too.
The others aren't too bad. Like in terms of freeze-dried foods, they're at the end of a day when you're hungry and tired, most of them are pretty good. But I don't think I'd want to live on them for like 14 days straight. I'd have to break it up with my food or something in between.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same where they don't heaps agree with me, or there's some that I can eat and not have trouble with, but there are some that I can eat and I'm just like, I really should not have eaten that.
I think that's a common thing.
I'm not sure if that's something that I could do multiple days in a row.
I don't think you're alone, and if you're hiking with a group and they're all living off we're going down a path we shouldn't be going down there.
Right, I did a hike a while back. I think it was 4 days in the Bolognese, and I ate like Radix for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I was pretty sick of it by then.
Yeah.
Which Radix for breakfast? Do they have a breakfast cereal?
They've got these like cereals which are pretty delicious, but you wouldn't want to eat them every day.
Yeah.
Do you have any other? Sorry, Lauren, I'm butting in.
No, go. No, you go.
Any other breakfast tips? Because breakfast I found it always be the hardest one. I could just chuck some muesli, but muesli is quite heavy. You could take Wheat Bix or something. I never got much out of Wheat Bix, and you need to put milk in there, powdered milk. Like apart from your mee goreng,
quick oats. Quick oats.
No, I think I'm pure mee goreng girl actually.
Yeah,
mee goreng for breakfast.
Yeah,
maybe I just do other cereals for breakfast.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I've always done powdered oats. I mean, not powdered oats, like quick oats.
Yeah,
and then powdered milk.
Powdered milk. Yeah, powdered milk's never quite the same though.
It's never quite the same, but I'm not sure. I might have to get over the savoury for breakfast thing that isn't bacon and eggs. Mee goreng.
Yeah, well, check out the Radix ones. They're pretty nice.
Yeah,
I think they're like gluten free or something because it's like a cereal, but it doesn't have oats and stuff. I don't really know what gluten free is exactly, but it's more nutty.
Backcountry Cuisine do a freeze dried cooked breakfast. I've never had it. I don't know what it's like.
Yeah, I have heard from a few people that it tastes really good, but blindfold yourself when you're eating it because you don't want to look at it. So you just mentioned before how 6 months out you like start geeking over your planning. Does that include dehydrating food 6 months before?
Yeah, sometimes. You'd be astounded how long this stuff lasts. I've only ever had one that I'm like, that's starting to probably get towards the end of its it just didn't smell amazing anymore once rehydrated, and that was like a year old. So I keep them in the freezer when I'm not not using them. And the other huge trick is don't put try and get all the fat out because I think it's the fat that goes rancid. So like with mince and stuff, like when I cook it, I'll try and then drain out all the all the mince fat, and then with jerky I cut off the fat. My old flatmate used to make this jerky with fat on it and it was so delicious. But yeah, it goes rancid a lot quicker.
You got to eat it quick.
Okay, good tip.
So dal, spaghetti, jerky, tomato wagon wheels. What else? Anything else?
I do some. These aren't as good. Like you go to like Woolies or Coles and you get like a bag of frozen veggies.
Yeah,
all cut up in like little squares. I just whack those in the dehydrator and they shrink down. So it's like my veggie hit, but they don't rehydrate. They're still pretty chewy, but something to be said for the chewiness can be enjoyable.
Yeah, sometimes it's like with a cup of soup and there's little tiny chunks of carrots. I don't mind if they're chewy.
A little bit leathery.
That's exactly what
carrot.
it's like. Yeah. And it's super easy, quick way to throw a few veggies in the pack.
You can buy dried ones, surprise peas or something like that as well, but they're not. They're not. It's probably cheaper to do your version. A kilo of frozen peas costs nothing, hey?
Yeah, it is cool. You see more and more stuff happening, like in the big supermarkets that you can sort of pilfer and take on the trail, which is nice.
Yeah,
I found a lot of Asian grocers are good too. They'll have like dehydrated mushrooms and all sorts of veggies and all sorts of things that you can throw into a sauce and make things out of. So
absolutely. They're a gold mine.
Yeah. So with your say your spag, for example, that's something that you can just rehydrate and cook when you're set up and you're ready to have dinner. It's not something you need to worry about in advance.
Nah. I mean, if I'm getting crazy, I'll get into camp and whack it in the pot and put some water on it. But you don't really need to. You can just sort of cook it when you want to eat it. And, it comes back together pretty well with those breadcrumbs in there, yeah.
That's really good. That's a good tip.
Especially
because one of my things has been like how long I assumed it took. And it's like, I don't want to carry a sloshing, Ziploc bag around of food reconstituting for hours in the afternoon.
Yeah. I imagine probably the easiest way is, like you said, Kate, you'll dehydrate leftover food that you've already cooked. So you cook a meal, maybe just cook a bit extra, put it in the dehydrator overnight and then store it. I haven't got a dehydrator yet, but that was my master plan. I thought that's probably the easiest way about doing that. I've
dehydrated stuff not for hiking but snacky. Oh, yeah, some snacky stuff I've done for hiking. But I just save those moisture sachets.
Oh, yeah.
And I usually just put them in a jar because I find sometimes it does just in the moisture out of the air, even if it's in a sealed jar, they can go
just to keep it
soggy
dry.
again.
Not the ones that say don't. Well, they all say
but
don't.
The freezer,
eat,
I never thought about putting them in the freezer.
I was thinking they all say do not eat, but some of them are probably probably don't take the ones out of like your t-shirt or clothes. Take the food grade ones. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll end up with little balls of like silica in your food. I was going to ask something, then I forgot what it was. You've thrown me. Oh, in the freezer. How do you because there's moisture in the freezer. So
look,
how do you manage that?
I don't actually know if that's like the best thing to do. It's just what I do, and it's in my brain it seems right. But I bought one of those, like, you know, those vacuum sealer things.
Oh yeah.
It's a bit of a. I'm not that impressed with it, but that sort of, you know, locks them in so they're nice and
that makes sense.
Protected.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Speaking of vac seal bags, because I use vac sealer, and the thing that I don't like is how much plastic you go through, and they're reusable to a certain extent. But recently I found there's this New Zealand brand that's making compostable vac sealer bags.
That's cool.
So I'll have to put the link to that.
Does that limit how long you can store your freeze-dried food then?
I'm not sure. I've got to look into it more. I just sort of saw it come up and I looked into it and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I bookmarked it in my brain.
It's definitely a worry, some of the things, you know, like ultralight, like is plastics and things like that. And you're like, because don't be throwing these out.
The Ziploc bags, like you say, are super handy, but they can be a waste. They can become a bin bag. But I'm like you, we've got Ziploc bags that we've washed and used I don't know how many times over for things in the freezer or whatever.
Yeah.
They're easy to throw out and contributes to
there was
waste.
Tanya Bottomley, who is someone who writes blogs for us. She just did 45th parallel traverse in New Zealand. She was talking about how she uses a resealable silicone Ziploc bag to reconstitute her meals, because when she's trying to save weight, what she does is she takes all of her meals out of the, like a backcountry meal. She takes it out of the sachet and she puts it in a teeny tiny Ziploc bag so she can try and save weight and space. And then she does all of her reconstituting in the silicone Ziploc bag. And I thought that was a pretty cool tip. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. There's a lot of waste from those freeze-dried food as well, because they're all in packets that you can't recycle.
Yeah, exactly.
So dehydrate your own.
Dehydrate your own. It's definitely the way to go.
You're on to the last question.
Well, I just want to know, do you have any food fails? Yeah. Apart from forgetting your spoon and having to drink all of your food. I wonder, do you have any like crazy food fails that you can share with us?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Food fails. Probably just those meat pebbles we were eating once. Sorry.
Meat pebbles.
Have you ever rolled up somewhere and realised you've forgotten something to light the stove with or anything and had to persevere in that respect?
I've done a few, bad ones, because I think, like, you know, when you first start out hiking, you got your gear list and you're checking everything off, and then you just kind of get a bit like lax with it. And so, like, you know, I do things like rock up and don't have a spoon, or there's been a few fails, but luckily none of them have stopped the trip. One of my mates rocked up once without shoes. That didn't go too well.
I'd like to say I never forget shoes, but I know what you mean. You just get a bit more, let's go for a trip. Yeah, I should be right. I just chuckle that in, think I'm sorted. And then you get there and think, how did I forget all that stuff?
Where are my tent poles?
Yeah, it's so basic.
Well, I've got one pair of undies for a week.
Inside, outside. When you wear front to back.
4 times, yep.
4 times. Awesome. Well, I think that's about covers it. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I was going to ask Kate if there's anything exciting in the
future. That's actually a really good question
for your YouTube channel.
Oh, so many exciting things. Yeah. I just geared up because my partner had our beautiful daughter about 3 months ago. Oh, cool. Congratulations. And so now, you know, family hiking is awesome. The next one on the cards. But doing that in the ultralight way is challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that before we started recording, actually.
Yeah. I've got a hike this weekend with 2 families. Both of us got 2 kids, and can't really make the kids carry too much. So the hike, it just becomes lesser distance with more weight on your back, basically.
Yeah.
Still getting out there to enjoy it though.
Yeah. But that's exciting.
It is, yeah.
And we're still I was trying to, because I've got the duplex tent, and I'm like, Elsie, we can fit in here with, you know, our baby, and she's, you know, we don't like co-sleeping and all that stuff. So it's like, no, we got to get this special tent for the kids to sleep in. And then I'm just like, that tent weighs, her sleeping tent weighs more than my tent. I'm just like,
Yeah, a lot more to consider.
Definitely.
I think you just got to make the most of what you can do and not get too upset that you didn't get to the end of the trail or make it to the summit. You made it 20% of the way, and that'll have to do this time around.
That's where we're camping, guys.
It's good to get them started early, though. Then it's just normalised. It's just something they're always doing.
You get used to the bugs and the cold and the dust and
I remember friends of ours did Cradle Mountain with their like 5 or 6 month old.
Yeah.
Wow,
in
that's
like
cool.
the Macpac baby carrier or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was so cool looking at all their photos and her partner was like this giant pack horse with this massive bag because she was just carrying this day pack with the baby in it. It's like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kate.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
It was good fun.
And
Thank you.
loved learning more about dehydrating food. And don't forget, wherever you are listening, to jump onto YouTube and check out Kate's channel. We'll put all the links to her website and her YouTube channel in the show notes, and anything else that we've talked about today we'll chuck in there as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the show, so it's been great to jump on. Thank you.
Awesome.
It's been awesome.
All right, see you
Yes.
later.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Snowies Camping Show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast, and jump on the Facebook group as well. If you've got any questions for Kate, chuck them in there and or
See if we
shoot
can get
them
them
through.
answered.
We'll see if we can get them answered. Thanks. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.